Stop overcomplicating problems. Think like a genius with first principles. Have you ever found yourself stuck in a spiral of overthinking, staring at a problem that seems unsolvable? It feels overwhelming, doesn't it? You try to chip away at it, but every attempt seems to complicate things further. The harder you think, the more tangled it becomes, like trying to untie a knot that only tightens with every pull. But what if I told you that the solution to almost every complex problem isn't adding more layers of thought, but stripping them away? That's the secret behind a genius-level mindset, the power of first principles thinking. Let's break this down. First principles thinking is about getting to the root of a problem, not the symptoms, not the assumptions, but the very core. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion until you reach the center. Instead of accepting the way things are or relying on what you've been told, you ask, what is this problem at its most basic level? What's the simplest truth I can build from? This approach has been used by some of the greatest thinkers in history, people who revolutionized their fields not by doing more, but by thinking differently. Take Elon Musk, for example. When Musk started SpaceX, people told him it was impossible to make space travel affordable. Rockets were just too expensive. But instead of accepting that as fact, Musk broke the problem down to its first principles. He asked, what is a rocket really? What are the basic materials it's made of? And what do those materials cost? By doing this, he discovered that the raw materials for building a rocket were only a fraction of the cost of buying one. This insight allowed him to rethink the entire process from the ground up and disrupt an industry once thought untouchable. Now, let me ask you something. How often do you accept the limitations that others or even your own mind palace on you? When you face a problem, do you question it deeply, or do you just work within the framework you've been given? This is where most of us get stuck. We overcomplicate problems because we approach them with layers of assumptions, biases, and mental shortcuts. First principles thinking challenges you to strip all of that away. It forces you to think like a beginner, to see the world without preconceptions. But here's the catch: stripping things down to their essence isn't easy. It requires effort, curiosity, and a willingness to sit with uncertainty. Most of us are uncomfortable with that. We want quick answers, not deep questions. But think about this: every time you avoid digging deeper, you're choosing complexity over clarity. Why? Because it feels easier, at least in the short term. But in reality, it's like trying to fix a broken machine without understanding how it works. You can tinker all you want, but unless you know its basic components, you'll never solve the real problem. Here's a practical way to start thinking in first principles. Turn every problem into a question. For example, if you're trying to save money but feel stuck, don't just say, I can't afford this. Ask yourself, what is money really? What are the basic ways it flows into and out of my life? What assumptions am I making about what I need versus what I want? Breaking it down like this gives you a fresh perspective, one that's free from the mental clutter that keeps most people trapped.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Let's go deeper. Imagine you're trying to improve your health. Most people would say, I need to go on a diet or start working out, but those are surface-level solutions. A first principles thinker would ask, what is health? At its most basic level, what does my body need to thrive? What habits are truly essential, and which ones are just noise? By asking these questions, you strip away the societal expectations, the fads, and the quick fixes. You get to the root of what really matters. Now, here's where this gets profound. First principles thinking isn't just about solving practical problems, it's a philosophy for life. It's about questioning everything. What do you truly want in life? Why do you believe the things you believe? What assumptions are shaping your reality without you even realizing it? When you start to think this way, you'll notice something incredible. The world becomes simpler, not because it's less complex, but because you've trained yourself to focus on what's real. So, I want to leave you with a question. What's one problem in your life that you've been overcomplicating? And if you stripped it down to its essence, if you asked yourself what it's really about, how might your perspective shift? This is the first step toward thinking like a genius. It's not about having all the answers, it's about asking the right questions. And in the next part, we'll explore how first principles thinking can completely transform the way you approach challenges, not just in your personal life, but in the world at large. Rebuilding the world, how first principles can solve any problem. Let's take this further. When you strip a problem down to its first principles, you're not just simplifying, you're rebuilding. You're taking apart the puzzle and reassembling it in a way that makes sense, not just based on tradition or assumptions, but on fundamental truths. This is what separates true innovators, leaders, and thinkers from everyone else. They don't accept the world as it's handed to them, they reshape it by asking better questions and refusing to settle for superficial answers. Think about some of the most transformative breakthroughs in history. Why did they happen? The Wright brothers didn't invent the airplane by copying birds, they studied the principles of lift, drag, and propulsion. Marie Curie didn't stumble upon radiation by following the crowd, she peeled back the layers of what people thought they knew about matter and uncovered something entirely new. These people weren't just problem solvers, they were world builders, and their secret was thinking from the ground up. But what about us? How do we apply first principles thinking in our everyday lives? Let's start small. Imagine you're stuck in a job you hate, but you feel like you can't leave because of financial obligations or fear of the unknown. Most people would either stay stuck or jump to another job without addressing the underlying issue. But a first principles thinker would pause and ask, what is a job really? At its core, what am I trading and what am I getting in return? What do I actually need to live a fulfilling life? And does this job align with that? From there, you can start to rebuild your approach, whether that means rethinking your financial priorities, exploring new skills, or even redefining what success means to you. Here's the thing, first principles thinking gives you clarity, but it also gives you freedom. Most of us are trapped by invisible walls, rules, and expectations we've inherited from society, family, or even ourselves. These walls tell us what's possible, what's realistic, what's normal, but have you ever stopped to ask who built those walls? And are they even real? Take something as simple as time. We often say, I don't have enough time, but what is time? At its most basic level, time is just how we measure change. The real question isn't whether you have time, it's how you're choosing to spend it. Are you prioritizing the things that matter, or are you letting distractions and obligations dictate your life? When you think in first principles, you start to see time not as a limitation, but as a resource you can shape. Now let's zoom out. What happens when we apply first principles not just to our personal lives, but to the world's biggest challenges? Climate change, for example, often feels overwhelming because we approach it with layers of politics, economics, and fear. But what if we stripped it down? At its core, climate change is about energy. How do we power our lives in a way that doesn't harm the planet? When you focus on the fundamentals, you stop being paralyzed by complexity and start moving toward solutions. This is why first principles thinking is so powerful. It cuts through the noise. It forces you to face reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. but it also empowers you to imagine what could be. When you break a problem down to its essence, you're left with a foundation you can build on. And from that foundation, you can create something entirely new, something the world has never seen before. So here's a question to ponder: what's one belief, habit, or rule in your life that you've never questioned? If you broke it down to its first principles, what might you discover? In the next part, we'll dive even deeper into how this mindset not only solves problems, but transforms the way you see and live your life. The inner revolution changing how you see yourself and the world. Let's turn the lens inward now. First principles thinking isn't just a tool for solving external problems, it's a way of reshaping how you see yourself and the reality you live in. Most of us carry beliefs about who we are, what we're capable of, and what's possible in life, but rarely do we stop to question where those beliefs come from. Are they true, or are they borrowed? Are they borrowed? Are they grounded in reality, or are they constructs we never thought to challenge? What if the biggest barriers in your life aren't external at all, but mental walls you've unknowingly built yourself? Take a step back and think about this. Who are you? Not your name, not your job, not the roles you play in society. Those are just labels. Strip those away. What's left? At your core, what defines you? Most of us never ask this question because it's uncomfortable. We're so busy living according to the scripts we've been handed by family, culture, or circumstance that we forget to ask if those scripts even make sense. But here's the truth: if you never question the foundation of your identity, you risk building your entire life on assumptions that don't serve you. For example, maybe you've always believed, I'm not a creative person, or I'm bad at math, or I don't deserve success. Where did those beliefs come from? Are they rooted in fact, or are they just conclusions you've drawn from a few past experiences? A first principles thinker doesn't accept self-limiting beliefs at face value. Instead, they break them down. What does it mean to be creative? Is it about talent, or is it about practice and persistence? What does it mean to deserve success? Is it something you earn, or something you define for yourself? When you start questioning these beliefs, something incredible happens. You realize how many of them are arbitrary. They're not truths, they're stories. And once you see them for what they are, you gain the power to rewrite them. But this isn't just about questioning yourself, it's about questioning how you interact with the world. Think about how often we take things at face value. We accept rules, traditions, and expectations because that's just the way things are. But who decided that? Why do we follow systems that don't align with our values or goals? First principles thinking challenges you to step outside the framework and ask what's really important, what's essential. Here's a practical example. Let's say you're overwhelmed by modern life, constant notifications, endless to-do lists, the pressure to be always on instead of trying to manage the chaos. A first principles approach would ask, why does this chaos exist? What's the root cause? Do I really need to answer every email immediately? Do I need to measure my worth by how busy I am? When you strip it down, you might find that much of the stress you feel isn't real. It's manufactured by expectations you don't actually believe in. This shift in perspective is revolutionary. It's not about rejecting the world, it's about engaging with it on your own terms. When you think in first principles, you stop being a passive participant in your life and start becoming its architect. You reclaim your agency. So here's what I want you to reflect on: what's one belief about yourself that's been holding you back? If you broke it down to its roots, what might you uncover? And more importantly, how might your life change if you rebuilt that belief from the ground up? In the final part, we'll explore how first principles thinking doesn't just transform individuals, it has the potential to reshape entire societies. Because when enough people start thinking this way, the rules of the game itself can change. The ripple effect, how first principles can reshape society. Now let's zoom out. First principles thinking doesn't just transform individuals, it's the spark that can ignite societal change. Every great revolution in history, every leap forward in technology, philosophy, or human rights started with someone who refused to accept the status quo. Someone who asked, "Why are things this way? Is this the best we can do? What if we start over and rebuild?" These questions, grounded in first principles, are what move humanity forward. Think about how much of society is built on inherited systems. Governments, economies, education, healthcare, these institutions weren't designed to be perfect. They were built to solve problems at a specific moment in time. But over the years, we've stopped questioning them. We've accepted their flaws as inevitable, their inefficiencies as normal. And yet, history shows us that the most transformative changes happen when someone dares to challenge those assumptions. Consider the abolition of slavery. For centuries, societies around the world accepted slavery as a fact of life. It was woven into the fabric of economies, religions, and cultures. But then, individuals like Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and William Wilberforce began to ask, what is the foundation of this system? Is it just? Is it necessary? They stripped away the justifications, the traditions, and the excuses, and at the core, they found a simple truth: no human being has the right to own another. By returning to this fundamental principle, they reshaped the moral fabric of society. Or take something closer to our time, the digital revolution. Companies like Apple, Google, and Tesla didn't succeed by following existing rules, they succeeded by breaking them. Steve Jobs famously said, "Innovation is saying no to 1,000 things." What he meant was that true innovation comes from simplifying, from cutting through the noise and focusing on the essence of a problem. That's why the iPhone wasn't just another phone, it was a rethinking of what a phone could be. But here's the challenge: societies are resistant to change. People cling to familiar systems, even when they're broken, because familiarity feels safe. It's uncomfortable to question the foundations of things we've relied on for so long. And yet, if we don't question them, we stagnate. Progress only comes when we're willing to ask hard questions, dismantle outdated systems, and rebuild from the ground up. Now, let me ask you something. What's one system in society that frustrates you? Maybe it's the education system, where creativity is stifled by standardized tests. Maybe it's healthcare, where profits often come before people. Or maybe it's something as fundamental as how we define success, as a race for wealth and status, instead of a journey toward meaning and fulfillment. Whatever it is, ask yourself, what are the first principles here? What is this system supposed to achieve, and is it doing that? If not, how could we rebuild it? This is where the ripple effect begins. When you start thinking this way, when you stop treating systems as unchangeable and start seeing them as constructs that can be redesigned, you inspire others to do the same. Change doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with individuals who are willing to ask better questions and challenge the norms. And here's the most exciting part: we live in a time when the tools for change are more accessible than ever. Technology allows us to connect, organize, and innovate on a global scale. Social movements that once took decades to build can now spread in days. But none of that matters if we don't use these tools with intention. First principles thinking ensures that we're not just building faster or louder, it ensures we're building better. So, as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with one final thought. The world around you was built by people no smarter than you. Every law, every institution, every piece of technology was created by someone who decided to tackle a problem and build something from the ground up. If they could do it, why not you? What's one thing in this world that you believe can be better? What assumptions are holding it back? And how can you strip it down to its essence and start rebuilding? That's the power of first principles thinking, not just to solve problems, but to transform lives, systems, and societies. It all starts with one question: what if we thought differently?